I think sport's a very fitting topic to what we've discussed previously. I mean, we've talked about men's mental health. We've talked about in the past the idea of a community. We've talked about the spirit of a community, really. And I don't think any other form of activity quite brings a community together like sport does. I mean, when we first started this podcast, I'm trying to think what Euro 2020s were about. And I mean, the whole nation like united when we got to the finals. And like when Luke Shaw scored that goal, I mean, I think that was in many people's minds the apogee of their life. And so I think that sport is this thing. It's something that can have so much positivity for a group of people, for individuals, and it can in many ways bring people out of their sorrows if they do support a sports team. But I think at the same time, sports also has the power to do something quite negative, and I think it's about that balance. I mean, in school, primarily, we hear sport. We hear about this thing called locker room banter, and that's something that movements like Movember try to get rid of. And they try and get rid of the exclusivity surrounding sport and try and get everyone involved because sport is both good for your mental health and your physical health. And I think that's really important. But I think before we get into why sport is what it is and why it's such an important thing, I think people should be more involved in, whether it be watching sport or playing or participating in sport. I'd just like to ask you, Dylan, what football team do you support?
I support Manchester City, and what about yourself?
I support Manchester United.
And can we just highlight the fact that sport can have a negative impact on you? How's United doing in the Champions League right now?
You know, we had some promise in our game. Sadly, a 2-0 lead, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to win the game. I think, yeah, I mean, it's sad, but ultimately it gives you a conversation to talk about with your friends the next morning.
Yeah, no,
You're
definitely.
getting mocked by everyone.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Dylan, why do you support Man City? And when did you start supporting Man City? I think is
Okay, fine. You're gonna use this argument on me, but let's just take it back a step. Okay, I was born in 2006. For everyone who doesn't know when I was born, the takeover of City happened in 2008. I was two. I didn't really have like the knowledge of material facts, as Aristotle would put it, to make a oh, I'm gonna be a glory hunter. I wasn't. I literally saw the first team on the TV that was playing against my dad's team, which was United, and I was like, all right, cool. I'm gonna support the opposite team. So I supported City. Like it's not that deep, okay? And you know
just
what?
happened to be around the takeover time.
Yeah. It happened to be around the takeover time. I mean, if I was born like 3 years earlier and I still supported City, okay, wow, it gives a little bit more extra merit to my fan viewership of Manchester City. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. I actually think though, like the reason why obviously look, City have done like really well in the last 10 years, like, and that's fine. But also the reason why I support them, and I don't really think it's that like deep to be honest, but for me, that moment in 2012, the Aguero moment, that is a moment that I will never ever forget, not purely for the sporting context, and obviously City winning their first league title in such a long time and beating United on the 93rd minute. But for me personally, like the joy that I gave just taking my shirt off and then running around the house topless, just screaming at the top of my lungs, it will never ever be repeated. And we've had like, down moments, 2021 when we lost the Champions League final to Chelsea.
Oh,
Like that,
boo-hoo. At least you got to
that
the final.
yeah, that wasn't great. But then the up moment of winning the treble. I mean, Aniruddh, you were at my house when we won the treble this year, and you can tell like how actually happy I was. And our mate Veer, our mate Kushal's brother Veer, both of us were just really happy. And like I think that just signifies like whatever team you support, the highs and lows is really like the highs you get and the lows you get, they are worth it. And like no matter what team you support, like I'm sure for you, Anirudh, like in 2013 when United won the title for the last time in the last 10 years, like it must have felt really really
The
good.
low Sir Alex Ferguson left us. Very much a low, Dylan. I haven't quite come back yet since. But yeah, I mean, that's ultimately, I think, what sport is about. And so, I mean, we're obviously using the example of football here, which is the most popular sport on the planet. I mean, it has, I think, the viewership for the World Cup. It's in the billions, and I think that's just extraordinary to think about that. What 30-40% of the population? I mean, this is just my estimate now. I have no backing of these facts, but what 30-40% of the population are watching the World Cup final.
Hmm.
It's something that unites the whole world behind a screen that can be no more than like 40 inches wide, yet in places like pubs and restaurants you'll have hundreds of people surrounded behind this, well, comparatively small screen. And I think it's just something incredible. And what you've talked about regards to like when Aguero scored that goal,
Hmm.
Balotelli gave him the assist, and QPR bottled what was a quite comfortable lead in what the last 5 minutes of a match. I think that's ultimately what sport is about. It's that adrenaline is constantly pumping through you, that ability that the adrenaline's constantly pumping through you. You don't necessarily know what's going to happen in the final score because as much as it is predictable, it isn't that predictable. I mean, what Aguero and Man City did in that game was unimaginable. I mean, if you're looking at the odds in the 85th minute, I'm sure it would have been QPR. It was 99% chance of winning. I mean, it's the same thing that happened in the Cricket World Cup. I mean, everyone thought going in India were going to absolutely demolish Australia,
Hmm.
but
I
I
think
mean,
I think actually like it's worth like it. We should give some merit to the sport of cricket. Like
yes.
cricket of all sports, it is so unpredictable. Like
I mean,
The
Travis
English,
Head,
yeah,
what an
Travis
inning.
had. But you look at like the teams that were in there. England were the reigning champions going in, and we didn't make the quarterfinals. We bottled it, right? And then India, they were smashing it through each game. They were absolutely
Unbeaten.
listing. And then the final comes, and Travis Head puts on the performance of a lifetime. And that's just it. Like for the participants in the game, sport provides you an opportunity to rise above any negative emotions, rise above any pressure, and show yourself and showcase your talents on a stage uncomparable to most other, what's called avenues and things like that. And I think it's really important because one, you've got so many people galvanizing and behind your back, supporting you, pushing you through any tough moments. But two, you're also leading that charge, and you're sort of the pride that you get from playing well, and then having those emotions after. It's that symbiotic relationship where you have the greatness of being part of it and actually initiating that moment, and also just the sheer awe factor of watching that moment play out. And I think that's what the beauty of sport is you
Yeah.
can have both the great feeling of watching it happen and just being mesmerized. I remember in 2019, I had the split screen of the Cricket World Cup final in England and then Djokovic and Federer and Wimbledon, like
Oh
that,
yeah.
and it went to the 12th set and everything. I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is
And then
beautiful.
the Cricket World Cup went to the Super Over. It
Yeah,
was
exactly. Like, just watching it must have been crazy. But then imagine Ben Stokes playing it and the pressure, but also the pride that he must have been felt representing his country. Like,
Ben
what do you
Stokes
think?
that year was sorry, I just want to say Ben Stokes that year was that Ashes inning, 135 not out at Headingley, I think might have been my favorite innings I've watched my whole life. I still remember when what's his name? What's his name came in? Um
Beach.
Leach, yeah, Jack Leach, when he came in, it just said one more wicket to win for Australia. And then they realized Jack Leach isn't getting out. I think Jack Leach's partnership with Ben Stokes was one of the best things I have seen in cricket in terms of an innings. And I think also Maxwell's innings in the Cricket World Cup was also
Yeah.
phenomenal. But I mean, yeah.
Yeah, but that's enough giving merit to cricket. But like, I just think whatever sport you engage in, if you truly put your heart and soul into it and you tell that story of sport with passion, then you're going to get moments that come out of it which are just ineffable. You can't put it into words. The feeling, the what it is likeness of participating in sport. Um, it genuinely gives you that feeling. Like we talk about the mainstream sports of hockey, cricket, football, potentially athletics. You know, the Olympics, they give you some like crazy sensations sometimes. But
Or
whatever sport you're interested
2012 Olympics. I'm sorry. Usain Bolt, Johan Blake, that 400-meter.
in. That Jamaican team was just,
That Jamaican team was crazy.
but yeah, but I think yeah, it is really important to sort of understand the weighting that sport has in our lives. You know, everyone is always looking forward to it. Like in school, we always chat about, you know, oh, who's going to win it on the Premier League this week, this weekend. And then whenever Monday morning hits, me, you, all of our mates, we're all just gassing or just like taking the piss out of each other. It's hilarious.
And I think what you so we've talked quite a lot now about like big sports, Premier League, Cricket World Cup. I mean, these are the most popular forms of sport in the world. And I think there are lots of sports that we haven't talked about. I mean, things like F1, which in the recent years has taken we've become hugely successful. I think particularly because of I can't remember. I don't know if it's Netflix's documentary Drive to Survive really boosted its viewership. Um, but also well, what you can consider unconventional sports. I mean, chess is considered a sport. I mean, that's a mental game if you've ever seen one. I mean, it's probably one of the hardest mental games you can ever play because when you're looking at these grandmasters play chess, whether that be Kasparov, Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru, or whoever, they're thinking constantly like 20 moves ahead, 30 moves ahead, planning out their planning their next move. And I think that's also something invaluable that sport teaches us. And that is to know the position you're in currently and to plan ahead for that, planning all possible outcomes or trying to plan as many possible outcomes and thinking about the best move you can make in order for you to have the most successful outcome. And I think that idea of trying to get the best possible outcome is something that is often needed to be used in life. Everyone's dealt with the set of dealt with whatever hand they've been given in life, and it's about using that hand, whether it be bluffing, whether it be going all in. I don't really know poker, but it's ultimately that I think sport can teach us. I mean, chess is, as I said, an unconventional sport because it's not physical, but other sports as well have the same thing. When you're playing football, do you want to use the wingers or do you want to play with a false nine? Do you want to use the 10 in its traditional sense? And it's all about constantly trying to get the best outcome for your team. And I think it's really important that you try and get the best outcome for yourself as well. And so, I mean, what would be your thoughts on that? Do you think more people should adopt that kind of strategy into their everyday lives, or do you think it wouldn't be possible? I mean, because what we are talking about in many ways, according to some, may be seen as like a traditional form of utilitarianism. I mean, I'm not advocating like using a hedonistic calculator, but I am saying that I feel as if you should try and create opportunities that will give you the best outcomes.
I think what you're saying absolutely has merit in the sense of, you know, when we approach life, we unconsciously actually employ a lot of sport tactics. You know,
Mm.
we want to manipulate situations, not in the bad way, but we want to manipulate and control situations for one, the most effective outcome for all of us, but for also the general community. Like, and there's no shame in admitting that because that's just the nature of reality that we live in. So I think actually, if you look at it in sport terms, you know, you're the manager of your own life. You're also your own leader. You know, a lot of leadership guys, especially in the last 20 years, have always talked about leadership as this constant state of activity that you're doing. You're constantly trying to improve yourself and lead yourself towards a better goal. And on the sports pitch, whatever it is, the swimming pool, the rugby pitch, the football pitch, the hockey, astroturf, whatever it is, you're always trying to do that because leadership starts from yourself. And on the sport pitch, especially, it teaches you to take ownership of your actions, take integrity and dignity in your actions, and take accountability. And I think, honestly, if you start actually consciously and actively employing those methods and those tactics in your life, taking accountability and individual responsibility for your actions, not always blaming others. And you know what, deciding that, you know what, sometimes I need to get up and I need to start doing certain things. Because if I do that, not only will it, you know, better me in the short term, in the long term, it will produce benefits so like disproportionate to other people that I will be able to push forward and live a really good life. I'm not saying that, other people should be your metric. Use yourself, think about it. If you don't improve by 1% each day, you're just sort of going to be stagnant. But if you just make those minor gains, keep disciplined and keep, at it, have people around in your life who give you that environment to succeed. The marginal gains that you make, not only in the endeavor that you're doing, for example, you keep on going to the weight room and therefore, you get better at your sport because you get more physically strong. Okay, fine. Employ that in your life. Okay, cool. I'm gonna make sure that an hour after school, just an hour, maybe not even an hour, 30 minutes after school, I'm gonna consolidate my notes and then make them into my flashcards or make them into my revision techniques. Imagine the marginal gains you'll make on that. And then employ that into the workplace and into your friendship. We were saying earlier, each day for 10 minutes, I'm just gonna have a conversation with a different person and just see how they're doing. The strengthening of those relationships and those friendships, honestly, it will be absolutely unequivocally like better for your life. I think that's so underestimated, the value of employing sport tactics in your life can be.
Yeah, and I think what you mentioned is really important. Those incremental steps, I think, fundamentally is what makes you a better person individually and will make the people around you better people. If you're making those changes, people will observe them and people will try and do what you're doing and become a better person. Because ultimately, whether you're in a friendship group or something, they don't want to be considered to be bringing the group down or bringing the reputation down. Because I mean, there's a sense of pride in every single person, and so yeah, I think that's really important that you mentioned. And one other thing that I'd like to mention about sport, group sport. Now, I mean, I think we'll move on to individual sport slightly later, and then talk about the negative effects of sport.
Yeah,
Is,
I have to eradicate them.
is leadership within sport, and you mentioned that we're each other's leader individually. And I think in sport, I think leadership is probably one of the most important things because it's not leadership like of a country or something. I mean, the people who are leaders of the country have gone down significantly different paths in life compared to you in terms of their professional career than the average person, let's say, because often there'll be I mean, like Rishi Sunak, he's a finance person, blah. Johnson, journalist, blah, and
Keir Starmer, he's an ex-lawyer.
lawyer. Yeah, exactly. But I think in sport, it's different because the people in your professional career have gone down very similar paths as you, like professionally, because you play for an academy, then you play for the under 18 squad, then you play for. I mean, this is just a linear progression. And this doesn't happen to most people, sadly, because sport is extremely competitive, and some people get picked up very late in life for sports, like Olivier Giroud, who I believe only started playing football when he was 19 or something.
Or we take like
Uh,
Joel Embiid in the NBA. He only started playing when he was 17. He only started playing actual basketball when he was 17, and now he's the reigning MVP. Like it's
it's crazy, but I think for the most part, most like players would have played for an academy. Like if you're looking at the Man City squad or Man United squad or Arsenal squad or whatever, or even rugby squad, everyone plays for an academy, and then you move up, you go to the second team first, or third team, second team, first team, and whatever, and that's quite a linear progression in your career. But that means the person who is the leader of your squad, who's the captain on the day, has to be someone that is slightly different and slightly unique compared to everyone else. Because if I were to look at you, Dylan, and let's say we've had the same life we've had the same thing, same trajectory in life our whole life, I would look at you almost like we're equals. But in sport, you need a captain, and a captain has to be equal on paper, but it needs to be a leader, and it needs to be able to be above you in
there's
many
there's
ways.
something about them that makes you not necessarily respect them more than everyone else, but if they speak, you listen. If they tell you to do something, you will run through a brick wall for them.
And so I think yeah, and that's exactly it. And so it's like, what is that thing? I mean, one of the most infamous examples I think of a great leadership team is All Blacks, the rugby team,
Mm.
and the All Blacks rugby team is this. I mean, they're technically not the most successful rugby team of all time after South Africa won the last World Cup, but I'm very much keen to say that they are the most successful rugby team of all time, purely due to the fact that I believe that try should have counted and they should have won.
Mm.
But um, their team is it has so much history in it. There's so much culture. I mean, they do the haka in the beginning of the at the beginning of each game, and it's considered, I believe, a war dance. And one of the things that all the senior players will do at the end of a match is that they'll clean the sheds. I mean, sheds in this instance is a synonym for the dressing room, and they'll get their broomsticks. I mean, these are 6'5" bulky men. I mean, some people may consider it emasculating. I use that term very loosely, to be cleaning a shed after, let's say, you've just won a match, or even if you lose a match. And that, I think, is the most important thing. I mean, the senior players on that team will clean the dressing room, and that, in my opinion, is no there is no better example of great leadership, because it shows, one thing, that you're respectful, but secondly, that you don't necessarily belong where you are unless you're able to look after what you have. And I think that is really important.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, we've seen that in the World Cup at Qatar when the Japanese team were also cleaning their dressing rooms. You look at the pictures that they left it as they found it, and I think that's such an important value in terms of you either leave it as you found it or you leave it in a better state. And it was really interesting because so Larry Bird, who's an NBA Hall of Famer, he's regarded as one of the best 3-point shooters of all time, just best players of all time, like top 7, top 8 minimum. And he's always said these old guns try and talk about how their era was better than the current era, but that doesn't matter. If these people who are playing right now have decided that they're going to leave the game in the way that they found it or in a better state, that's all we can ask for. And you know what? So be it. They are leaving and they are showing the young kids of today in such good ways, in such good methods of respect, that they are the best role models for the game, and that's all you can ask for. And I think that's so important to have, these figureheads of sport we see. Like when we talk about sport, we talk about a certain figure. For me, like basketball, I associate with two people, LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, for me personally. Football, we associate with Ronaldo, Messi. It's sort of unequivocal and universal in that respect. Cricket, I'm sure we could rattle off so many names. For me personally, it's Root and Kohli. I don't know about you, but the fact that you have that personal connection with certain figureheads of the sport, they must have imparted something within you really positively. Like for me, LeBron James is work as hard as you can. Kobe Bryant is work as hard as you can, and LeBron James is bring everyone else on that journey with you and make a positive impact with you. Like, I don't know about you, but do you sort of have that thing where it's like, if those figureheads of those sport are bringing that positive energy in whatever unique way and form, you sort of then gravitate to that sport in a certain way even better than you did before?
Yeah, and I think, yeah, you have those certain people in the sport that just make you respect it in a whole different light. I mean, for, as you mentioned, football, Messi, Ronaldo. I mean, Messi, I mean, people say he doesn't really work. He's talented, basically. I mean, he works extremely hard. I'm sure you can't reach the pinnacle of the game and not work hard. But Ronaldo is all about hard work. I mean, everything you see the man do, it's just hard work. And then the same thing for like cricket. I mean, you said, who did you say, Root and
So for me, I said Root and Dhoni.
I thought you said Kohli. Okay.
Kohli, sorry, I did say Kohli, but Dhoni's like
Yeah, I see. I was going to say MS Dhoni as well for
he's like
cricket.
another level. He's
And,
just
I'd say Ben Stokes 2019 as well for me.
yes, Ben Stokes, big time.
And then like rugby, you got like Richie McCaw, Johnny Wilkinson, and I think it's really important that you have you have those people that you aspire to look up to in sport, because they're ultimately the people that lead a team. They'll lead a team to success. They'll lead your team to failure. I mean, it's not holding them accountable for the failure. Rather, it's celebrating the fact that they are able to lead a team that you enjoy. I think is really important.
Hmm.
I think we've talked a lot about now in team sports, and I think it's also important to remember sport, as mentioned before, like chess. It's not
Like
just
fitness at the gym, fitness at the gym.
fitness at the gym. Tennis, I think, is also another like really famous example of an individual sport. I mean, I'm not a big tennis fan. I just watch Wimbledon once a year, and that's about it.
Same,
Um,
same.
yeah,
Our good mate Kushal loves tennis.
I might watch the US Open final or the French one,
Yeah,
but
Roland
the
Garros
French
just to
one,
see the
yeah,
dart.
The French one's on clay. Yeah,
Yeah.
But yeah, those are all individual sports. And obviously, in that example, you can't have a leader you look up to. You can't have an extra person um, cleaning the dressing room. And you can't necessarily have that team spirit that forms when you're among so many different people. So my question to you, Dylan, is: if you were an individual sport person, what lessons can you learn, and what lessons do you have to teach yourself, and how do they transpire into your everyday life?
I think there's two. I think the first one is accountability, because you are responsible for who you decide to pick to be around you, and you set the tone for the work ethic of your team. You're responsible for that. And I think the second is actually it's a greater respect for your environment. You're in it in yourself, in your own capacity. So everyone you encounter, you have to respect, because they are in the same, if not even an even worse or an even better boat. So you have to respect them because they're doing the graft as much as you are, because it's more individualistic. So I think respect and accountability, but mainly accountability for your actions and and sort of like everyone talks about the success is like the peak of the iceberg. It's the accountability that you hold yourself, setting the tone every morning, getting up, doing whatever workout you have to do, learning and being open to criticism, constructive or not, and then improving based off that. All of those type of things you have to be accountable for and you have to set the tone for. So I think that's quite important. And I think respect for your surroundings and respect for the people who are genuinely trying to give you advice because you're on that individual level. I think that's really important as well, and understanding that you're not the smartest person in the room. You're not always going to get it right. Being open to that, and then being allowed to be like a sponge and absorb that information and improve yourself. I think that's really important. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think what you mentioned about accountability, I was thinking was probably be the most important thing that you can learn from an individual sport. I mean, sometimes you won't have. I mean, they have managers and stuff like tennis players, but I mean, it's ultimately it's only you on that pitch, on that court, making the decisions, and it's something that is going to be hard. I mean, accountability can weigh like weigh tons on your shoulders, but I feel as if it's really important to learn in life in general that you've got to be accountable for your own decisions, your own actions, and you can't necessarily blame others for every single decision you make or for every single outcome that happens from your life. And so, yeah, I think what you said about accountability is extremely true. And I think it's something that's especially true, as you mentioned, in individual sports. I mean, it is something they have to take away in team sports, but I think it's deserves more emphasis in individual sports than it does in team sports, because it's only you on that court and it's only you against one other person. And between the two of you, you have to entertain people. I mean, in tennis matches, what can be, I think the longest tennis match is like 11 hours or something. So for 11 hours, which is something crazy.